Hey Mama, welcome back to another episode of Badass Mama Moves. This is your girl Yara here. If you're joining for the first time, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for being here with us. So today we're talking about the stuff we wish somebody would have schooled us way back when we were growing up. And we're talking about real deal generational change type of stuff, the legacy moves kind of stuff, the kind of shift that doesn't just impact you, but your babies and their babies and everything and everyone else who comes after. So that is money, and not just the bills and the budgeting piece of it, but what we teach our kids about it or don't. Most of us, and to be real, weren't taught jack about money. We weren't raised having healthy conversations about saving money or budgeting or how credit works. No, if we got anything at all, was silence, straight up silence, stress, or that kind of like, we don't talk about money in this house kind of vibe and energy. And as a matter of fact, in so many households, and especially in single mama homes, the topic of money was basically taboo. It was either filled with tension, with arguments, and straight up secrecy. And what does that really teach a child? It teaches them that money is either scary, something to be ashamed of, that is a mystery, ain't no strategy, no planning, just struggle and survival, period. We saw bills pushed back. We saw paychecks stretched thin, like they were too. Some of us even had to grow a little faster to help cover rent or translate bills for our parents. That does something to a kid. It wires our brains to connect money with anxiety and lack instead of peace and possibility. Now fast forward to today, what we are seeing. According to a report from CNBC, nearly 75% of Americans say they're stressed about their finances. And over 50% of college students have credit card debt they don't even know how to manage. That is so sad and scary. Kids entering adulthood already drowning in debt, not being able to breathe or swim. But mama, listen, we that cycle can start with you. We have the power to break it. Because here's the truth. It is never too late to change the story. Even if nobody showed us how, we can be the ones to flip that script. We can raise kids who are confident talking about money, kids who don't carry guilt or confusion around it, kids who know what that wealth isn't just for the other people, it's for them too. You don't need to have stacks in the bank or a perfect credit score to teach your kids powerful lessons, money lessons. What you do need is honesty and consistency and the willingness to keep it real. That's all we need. That's why I've always been big on having real, simple, age appropriate conversations about money with my son as he's been growing up. Not lectures, not fear, just everyday honest chats that help him connect the dots. Even when I didn't have it all figured out, and trust me, I didn't at times. I still knew I didn't want him to grow up in the dark like I did. And let me tell you in full transparency and to be honest, I taught myself about money, about managing money, about budgeting, and I opened my very first bank account when I was 11 years old. And yes, my mom's name was in the account, because a minor can have an account on their own. But it was me managing the money. It was me keeping track of the checkbook. Do you remember those checkbooks back in the day that the bank used to give? I really used this. I used it, and I even had fun using them. I loved them. We're not funny or not. I guess that tells you right there. I was meant to be a money person and all of that. But anyways, the point is that we should not leave our children in the dark when it has to do with money. Let's just break that cycle, because when we know better, we do better. And now we got better tools, we got the language, now we got the power to empower them and again break that cycle. So let's talk about the why. Why so many of us weren't taught this stuff in the first place, and what that did to us. Got to talk about Why so many of us weren't taught this stuff? And no, this is not about blaming our parents or pointing fingers. Absolutely not. That's not the goal. Absolutely, this is about understanding the roots of our money struggles, so we can stop passing that stuff down, generation after generation. Most of us were raised by parents who were just trying to make it. No shade on that. Absolutely no shade on that. Our mamas, our abuelas, they did what they had to do with what they had, the best they could. What they had wasn't a whole lot. Some of them were working two, three, sometimes even four jobs just to keep a roof over our heads and food on the table. In a lot of homes, especially homes led by single moms, that kind of pressure was a daily reality, sadly, but it's just real stuff. So when you're living paycheck to paycheck, when you are deciding between putting gas or buying groceries, when you are robbing Peter to pay Paul just to keep the lights on, that's stressful. That's overwhelming. You ain't got time to sit down and teach about compound interest when you're just trying to survive. Not plan or strategize, and definitely not invest. You're just trying to survive, make it through the day. And let's talk about the other layer to it. A lot of our moms, a lot of our abuelas, they didn't have the tools themselves. They weren't taught either. Their money lessons were wrapped in silence, straight up fear and trauma, even. A lot of dads, let's just be real, some of them weren't even around. That absence shaped how we saw money and relationships too. It shapes a lot of things for us, but that's topic for another episode. So then what happened? Money became a taboo, something to be ashamed of. It became that thing nobody talked about, unless it was just to say that we didn't have enough of it. It became a huge stressor. For some of us, it meant growing up hearing things like, we can afford that, or like, money doesn't grow on trees, mind your business, folks are talking here. We grew up around that kind of language. Instead of learning how to manage money, we learn to fear it, to be ashamed of it, to be up, or maybe even be obsessed over it, or to attach our worth to it, and that's a very dangerous one. And when you grow up like that, guess what? You either follow that same pattern or you go broke trying to do the opposite, still without the tools. We are waking up now. We are realizing that if we don't teach our kids, the world will. And we certainly don't want that. The world teaches them that buying designer clothes or designer whatever the heck it is means you made it. You know, they're normalizing debt. Being in debt is something normal. No, they teaching that saving is boring, that being rich is for other people. No, why can't we? Why can't our children? We have the right just like any other person. And don't even get me started with all the bullshit out there that is in social media. These kids out here seeing influencers flexing, fake lifestyles, pushing brands and living off credit like it's no big deal. They're being taught that, to spend before they can even learn how to earn. What the hell? So again, this is why I made it my business to have money conversations with my son as he was growing. Not to not in some sit down lecture kind of way, not like let's talk about finances, son. No, none of that. I brought it up in the car like a normal kind of type of thing at the store. When he asks for something, I break it down why I was saying no, or why I was saying yes. I let him hear me talk about budgeting, about saving, about saying no to things even when I had the money for it. He knows at least ask about the budget now. He knows to at least ask about, mommy, what's the limit? Um, and things of that sort. I knew he didn't need perfection. I just needed to be real, be real and transparent with him, because that's the thing. You don't need to be wealthy to teach your kids wealth principles or money principles and build that foundation. You don't need a degree in finance to start a conversation. You just need to be honest. That's all you need. about what, be honest about what you do know and what you are learning. Let them in, let them be part of the interaction, let them see you working through it, let them ask questions, let them make mistakes and learn from them. Like let them see our mistakes and how we learn from them. Because when we're open with them, we're not just teaching about money, we're teaching them how to think critically, how to self-reflect, how to build a relationship with money. That's a relationship with money that's healthy, not toxic or based on shame or something like or anything like that. And I get it. Some of us still feel weird talking about money. Maybe you're still working through your own mess with it. Maybe you've made some mistakes you're not proud of. I mean, we all have that kind, right? We all have made mistakes that we're not proud of, that we wish we could just hit that redo button and just do it over again. But guess what? That doesn't disqualify you. In fact, it makes you even more qualified because you've lived it. And now you've got something to save. You got something to share because you have experienced it. You have lived it. So as you're listening to this episode, I want you to know, that you're not behind, you're not late, and your kids don't need you to be perfect. There's no such thing. Only God is perfect. They just need you to show up, to say, hey, let's talk about this. What kind of lessons can we start teaching them? Just the simple ones, the real ones, lessons that meet our kids right where they are and grow with them as they grow as well. We can even grow with them, even if we're adults. We can continue growing and learning as well as we do this. Because it's one thing to know the why, but let's just talk about the what. What can we start teaching our kids right now? And any age, even if we're still on the journey ourselves, like I said, like, even if we're still learning ourselves, let's just break it down for a second. No matter how young or old your kids are, it's never too early or it's never too late either to start teaching them about money. Any moment is good. I'm not talking about handing them a textbook or turning every moment into a lecture. I'm talking about everyday real life conversations, the kind that come up naturally because they are tied up to an actual moment they can feel, they can see there that they're experiencing, that they're living. For instance, if and this is something simple but foundational. Money comes from work. Money doesn't come from mommy's purse. Money doesn't fall from the sky. And money that certainly does not grow on trees either. Like we were always hearing when we were growing up. Our kids need to understand early on that money is earned. Even the little ones can learn this. Like, hey, you help pick up the toys. Cool. Here's a sticker. Here's a quarter. Here's you get to pick what's for dinner tonight. Something like that. It doesn't have to be tied up to cash every time, but the point is to start building that connection between effort and reward. I know we're not paying them for every single dish they wash or every pair of socks they fold, but we can create small opportunities to reinforce that money requires energy. That's the lesson right here. Showing them that money is not, it's a magic. It's a movement. It's energy. It takes sacrifice. Now, once they start grasping that, you can build on it with the next lesson, and this one right here is a game changer. And it's needs versus wants. And listen, girl, let me tell you, this one right here, I even go over with my grown clients that I'm coaching, my coaching clients, because if we didn't learn it early, we actually can go broke trying to do it later, trying to figure it out later. So the example I always give, especially to kids, is simple, like that $12 Fortnite skin. Yeah, very cute. But is that something we need? Milk and bread, definitely a need. And the best time to teach this is in the moment, at the grocery store, simple trip to the grocery store, right? Hey, we got $20 for snack. Do we want to get the giant bag of Takis or we get fruits and juice, for the week so you could take for snack for the school for the week through the drive-through? Do you want to upsize everything or do you want to keep it basic so we can buy ice cream later on during the week? Real life examples hit way harder than lectures because they're living it. They can see it, they can feel it. The second they think you're giving them a lecture, girl, you are going to be so tuned out. Trust me, I've been there, done that. My son has that invisible mute button on lockdown sometimes, and the thing is that I can see when I've been tuned out. Like I can see his face. It's just funny. It's funny, but it's not. I don't like it. But anyways, when you make it part of the moment, it sticks. When you're helping them learn how to make decisions and prioritize, even in small, tiny ways, it really sticks. Now, let's build on that with another big one, and that is saving money. Like I said before, saving money, a lot of people think is it's boring. And what I'm telling you right now is saving is a flex, period. It's just depending how you flex, right? But they got to see it that way. They don't make us no, don't make it sound like it's a punishment. Like saving money is a punishment. Make it sound like a power move, right? Explain it like you are not just keeping your money, you are telling them what to do later. Like they have control of the money. That we are supposed to be the one in control of the money, not the money controlling us. Let them see the stats growing. Even if it's just a few dollars or some change in the jar, that progress is powerful. They can see that they get excited to continue saving. It creates that momentum, that excitement, and they continue going, right? And when they got their eyes on a toy or a game or something like that they really want, help them to set a goal and save towards it. Celebrate the wins, even if they're small. Just save $5. That's $5 closer to your goal. Cheer them up. Keep them excited, involved, and interacting. That process teaches them patience. Saving money teaches them patience and discipline and sacrifice. All the things we didn't get handed early on, when we're growing up, right? So once they got the hang of earning and saving, then it's time to move into the real grown up mindset, and that's spending with intention. Because listen, just because you can afford something doesn't mean you should buy it. That's a lesson some of us are, out here are still learning. That unnecessary Target run, the Amazon cart at 1 a.m. in the morning. Hello, I see that. I see you. I mean, I've done it too. For our kids, teach them to pause before they buy. Ask, do I really want this, or is it just something of right now kind of thing? Is it something I've been thinking about for a while, or is it just because I saw it and it looked good for a good quick 3 seconds? That pause is it's key. It's a big moment. That pause, that space between desire and decision. That's where wisdom starts to grow. Even if they don't get it right, every time, that pause is something they'll carry with them. And finally, one more piece to wrap this lessons up is mistakes are lessons. We know that, right? Like for real, if they blow they blow their birthday money, all of their birthday money on junk. They stop caring about it in 2 days. A toy that they just stop caring about it in 2 days. Let it be a lesson. Don't bail them out. Don't throw them with like I told you so at them either. That comment can spark some shame and embarrassment. Instead, you can sit with them and ask, what would you do different next time? Let them talk through it. Let them, reflect. That reflection helps them make better choices next time. And that's how real growth really start happening. Mama, listen, teaching our kids about money, it's not about perfection. It's about intention. Every conversation you have, every choice you model, every no with an explanation or even a yes with boundaries, it's planting seeds. Little by little, those seeds grow into confidence. Those seeds grow into awareness and wisdom and better decision making. Even if you didn't get the lessons growing up, you got the power to pass them on now. Like we got the power to do that because we're not just breaking cycles. We are building new ones because we didn't have that blueprint. We didn't have those lessons. And trust me, your kids, they're watching. Our kids is they're always watching, they're always learning, and one day they will thank you for it. They're gonna thank us for it. All right, Mama. So we're gonna go on a quick commercial break. But before we do that, let me just take a quick minute, a quick second. If you're loving these money conversations and you are ready to start building a better future, not just for you, but for your babies as well, let's just have that conversation. It's very important that we start building that foundation. So you can email me at yara@moneymovescoaching.com, Yara@moneymovescoaching.com, and just mention the show and we'll take it from there. All right. So let's take a break, and I'll see you when we get back.
Thank you for watching Prospera TV Network. We hope you're enjoying the show. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
All right, Mama, we are back, and I hope you took a second to breathe and stretch and sip on some water. So before the break, we talked about what to teach our kids, right? All those money lessons we didn't get growing up. And now you might be sitting like and thinking like, okay, yeah, cool, but where the hell do I even start? Girl, I hear you. I got you. Like I get it, right? Because talking about money, especially if you didn't grow up with those type of conversations, can feel awkward at first. Like what if I mess up? Why? What if I don't know the answer? Or what if my kid just makes that kind of face and walks away? Like I know because I've been there. I get it. But here's the thing, you don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to sit them down like it's a finance class or some sort of tech talk. The goal here is to fold it in, just like you would with any other life lesson, to bring them in the moment. It's not about making it a moment, I should say. It's about making it a norm. Like something really natural, smooth, like at the store. Instead of just tossing stuff in the cart, pause and say, let's check the price. Let's see if this fits the budget. They're seeing that money has limits when you do that. It's not just swipe and go kind of thing. It doesn't go like that, right? It's not about making them feel guilty either. It's about showing them how choices are made. During allowance time, you can say like you want to put a little something towards savings for that bag you mentioned earlier or before. Offer options, spend, save, give. Offer them options. Let them own their money in a safe space with gentle guidance. It builds decision making and discipline in a way that feels empowering instead of being forced or being ashamed of it or shameful, right? When you're paying bills, let them hear it. I'm paying the electricity bill. That's what keeps the lights on and the Wi-Fi flowing for your games. Simple. But it's not in a guilt kind of way. It's not a guilt trip. It's context. And it helps them connect the dots. Like that comfort costs money, and money has to be managed and managed well and wisely, right? These tiny conversations really add up. You're planting seeds every single time. Over time, those seeds grow into awareness. Those seeds grow into understanding and confidence. And that's the goal. That's what we want. That's how we break those cycles. And we should also normalize not knowing everything. we just don't. If your kid asks you something and you don't know the answer, it's okay. It's okay to admit, and you with your chest held high. Oh, I don't know that yet, but I'm learning too. Oh, I didn't know that. I don't know that. Let's just figure it. Let's search it up and learn it together. Something like that. That's powerful. That's super powerful. It shows them that grown ups don't have to pretend. Trust me, they are watching. They will call you out later. Like, trust me, because I've been called out. So even if you think they're zoned out, or on their phones, or they're not watching, they are watching. They're listening. Kids pick up everything. The good, the bad, the ugly, and the confusing, like everything. They watch how you react when your card gets declined. They listen to how you talk about money when you're stressed. They notice when you say we can't afford that versus that's not in our plan right now. It's not in our budget right now. They see all of that. They take on all of that because language matters, words matters. Your attitude about money, the energy you bring into those conversations shapes how they'll feel about it too, because they taking that in from you. So don't make it scary, don't make it a mystery, make it normal and keep it age appropriate. A 6-year old doesn't need to understand compound interest, but they can understand that saving $1 a week adds up to something big over time. A teenager may not care about Roth IRAs just yet, but they will care about how to avoid being broke by Friday. They like tailor it, meet them where they are, and be consistent. Not perfect, but just consistent. And remember, this is a journey you guys can walk on together and both grow. We're always growing and learning, all of us, no matter what age we are. When you include them in small decisions, should we get the bigger popcorn or save the $3 for movie night next week? You're inviting them in. You're giving them ownership over money instead of keeping them in the dark like so many of us were. We are breaking that cycle. And I'm not saying every conversation is gonna be deep or magical. Some days they'll be into it, and other days they'll roll their eyes like, "Ay, bendito." I hit you with like, "Ay, mama," like, "Mommy," like, I don't want to hear talk about it. I don't want to hear that now. Like, listen, I know. And that's fine too. But keep going. Keep going. Like I said, consistency. You're planting fruits, you're planting seeds, you're planting those roots. And one day when they're older, making their own choices, those roots, they will hold them steady and they will show, like, for sure. Yes, it's not fancy, it's not like flawless, but it's just, intentional, right? Consistent. And trust me, that's more than enough. Let me bring this home for you, Mama, because I know everything we've talked about so far sounds good, and but sometimes you need to see it lived out. You need to hear from someone who's actually doing it. Flaws and all. What I've been doing with my son, you already know I didn't grow up with money lessons. Nobody pulled me aside and said like, okay, Jada, here's how you manage your cash. Here's how you invest. Here's how you protect your peace and your pockets. On like none of that stuff. I didn't have that. My early money education was trial and error and survival. And a straight up struggle. I thought myself, I made it my business to learn about money management, about budgeting, about savings. Also learn from my mistakes, of course, because we all go through those. That's just life. That's the way it goes. But when I became a mom, I knew I had to do better. Not perfection, but better. But girl, let me tell you, I didn't start off with some big ass plan. I just started where I was. Even like as a financial consultant and coach, it doesn't mean I had all figured out with this mommy thing and teaching my son like that because I didn't have it. I didn't have that. But I decided I was going to talk about money with my son as often as I could in ways he could understand, in real moments Nothing forced, nothing over his head. Again, age appropriate. So this is how it looked like, over the years. For instance, when he was little, we set savings goals together. When he was younger, I give him a little cash for birthdays or holidays, or he will get it from family. And then we talked about putting a portion, of it aside that he will put in his piggy bank, and we'll check. You will check it from time to time, and he will see the progress in the piggy like growing, in the piggy bank like growing. When he reached a goal, I will let him buy what he wanted, even if I thought it was a dumb waste of money. But hello, that's not the lesson here. It was about him feeling that reward of discipline, the satisfaction that he works towards it. You can buy that kind of lesson in life. I'm also honest about bills and priorities. I don't hide my money from him. Of course, I keep it age appropriate, like I continue saying that. But I let him see me budgeting. I let him see me making money decisions. Like I say, if I could have bought those shoes this week, but I know the car needs maintenance next month, so I need to put the money towards next month's budget, right? Sometimes I even tell him how I messed up. I shouldn't have bought that extra takeout this week. Now I got to move some things around the budget to make it work, because I want him to know that managing money isn't about, never making mistakes. It's about how you recover from it. We talk about values, not just dollars. This is a big one. I ask him things like, what's more important to you? Like getting something fast or working towards something bigger, right? It takes sacrifice, and I let him see that. We even talked about tithing and giving. I told him money has energy, because it really does, and that when you're intentional with it, it can bless us and it can bless other people around us. I want him to see that money is a tool, not a trophy. It's meant to be used with purpose, not for showing up or for any kind of exhibition. And he's seen me struggle, and that's a lesson too. There were times when money was tight, but like tight, and I didn't sugarcoat it. I let him know. That transparency built trust between us. He knew I wasn't hiding stuff, and he saw me grind. He saw me budget and sacrifice, cry sometimes even, but also how I made it work. And now that he's older, our conversations have matured too. Well, he asks better questions. He calls me out too. Like, why are you buying that, mommy? We don't need that. And then he takes it off the cart. Like, he literally does do that. Right? Like, honestly, like, I'd be like, oh my God, really? Like, I don't like it. But it makes my heart full, because it means that seed I've been planting is growing. It means that he's thinking, that he's aware, that he's learning, and he's applying what he's learned, and so that makes me happy. So if you're listening to this and thinking, I haven't done any of that, it's too late. No, it's not too late. If your kid is 5 years old, 15 years old, you can still start today. One conversation, one moment, one example at a time. It's never too late. You don't need to be rich. You don't need to be perfect. There's no such thing. Only God is perfect. You just need to be present and intentional and willing. I made mistakes before I figured out any of this out, but I didn't let those mistakes stop me. I used them as lessons. So if I can do that, if I did it, you can too. You just need to start small, keep it simple. Don't make things complicated. Just keep it simple. Be consistent, and most importantly, let your kids see you doing the work. Because even if they don't say it, they are watching. They are learning from you. They're learning from you more than you know. All right, beautiful mamas, this is it for this episode, and I really hope I was able to help you in some way, somehow. Let's break cycles. Let's create this new blueprints, strong blueprints, even the ones that we didn't ask for. Those cycles that we didn't ask for. Let's just break them, Mama. So thank you so much for spending this time with me, Remember, I see you, I feel you, I am you. And as I always say, stay grounded, stay fierce, and let's keep making those badass mama moves. See you in the next one.
This is your Prospera era, where dreams align with grace, abundance flows like rivers. You've stepped into your place. Rise, reign, and remember, you were born to shine. Welcome to your moment, Prospera, it's time. We hope you enjoyed today's show on Prospera TV Network. Make it a point to visit us on YouTube and catch all your favorite shows anytime you want. Interested in hosting a show of your own? Or advertising your business on our network? Contact Elena Rodriguez.